In this video, I'm going to be talking about how I painted this sculpture of myself as a robot for my ceramics class. So to start off, this project was for my class, Ceramics 4. We had to do a self-portrait assignment where we had to make a sculpture of ourselves or something that symbolized us. So I went with a very literal idea, and I did myself, and I wanted to make it into a robot. I'll talk about the themes a little bit later, but basically this is just bisque-fired, and I decided to use acrylic paint. The main reason I used acrylic paint is because I don't have access to a kiln that's able to fire right now. I do have some kilns which I'll get up and running inside of a shed that I'm putting together. I'll make another video about that. Super excited about how that project's coming together. I'm going to set up my own studio in the backyard with kilns and wheels, but right now I don't have access to a kiln that can fire underglaze, so I went with acrylic paint. And also another factor is acrylic paint can give me a high amount of detail that I really can't achieve yet with underglazes. Of course, I've used underglazes in the past, and I've experimented with them a bunch, but I just think I can get the amount of detail I want out of the acrylic paint, and if it gives me the same result, then I don't see any reason not to use my resources and just use what I have on hand, which is acrylic paint. Also, I think it's really fun painting with acrylic paints, and sometimes underglazes you just have to gamble with the kiln and like whether it gives you the result you want or not. So that's why I went with acrylic paint. I know that a lot of artists don't like that. A lot of ceramics artists would rather use underglaze, and they don't like that acrylic paint and ceramic mix, which I've had that debate in the past, but I don't mind using acrylic paint. I like acrylic paint and the results I get, so I will use it. I started off with a black wash for this sculpture to just make the entire robot's face black. And then I went ahead and I did a white, like whitish brown color for the metal, or like the panels. My idea going into this was it's a robot with a bunch of panels and of metal on its face, all stitched together into a robot. And the way I thought about it was a rusty, old, broken robot with a bunch of wires sticking out of its neck and blood, and I think it would look pretty cool, like a little creepily painted. And the reason I went with rust and the head being like ripped off almost and there's blood is because the theme for this project that I did was a self-portrait of myself, and then which hopefully you could tell it's me, but it's a self-portrait of myself as a robot because it feels like at times I've been consumed by my technology. And the reason I say that is because it feels like in today's society we've lost touch with each other, and we're too consumed in our own lives. We're too plugged in, literally plugged in. So this sculpture, that's why I bought a bunch of wires from the Goodwill bins, and you'll see at the final result of this sculpture, I added blood on the bottom, and I added a bunch of wires sticking out and a bunch of plugs, and that's just to symbolize like how this sculpture's been literally ripped apart and this robot's been mangled and destroyed. And I think that's just because I like that the blood is like almost human aspect to the sculpture, how this robot bleeds too, and how it's me, it's my person, because I believe that like I'm not in touch as in touch as I should be. I'm too plugged into my devices, and I think that's a cool theme to dive into, and I think there's a lot of themes that can come out of this sculpture. I really enjoyed painting this sculpture, actually. I did a bunch of sponging techniques, like I added a bunch of washes of brown to rust up the white, so then it wasn't a stark white, it was like a brown and it was rusty. And then I added blood, and the way I added blood was I muddied the red acrylic paint. I muddied it up a little bit so it looked a little bit darker, and then I used a sponge and I dabbed it onto the bottom of the neck of the sculpture. I wanted to make it look like its head been ripped off, and then the hand has been ripped off and cut off, and then it's just sitting in like maybe like sand or some sort of like biome where you found it years later buried as like a fossil. I wanted to make it look really roughed up and beat up, so I did a bunch of dry brushing on top of those washes, and I wanted to make it look kind of plasticky and like fake and robotic, which I think I did achieve. I did have a friend say that it looked like wood and it didn't look like metal, and I think to fix that I might add a clear coat, but I want to know some thoughts and some opinions on this. I don't know if it should be shiny. I've heard it shouldn't be shiny. I've heard it should be. I'm not sure. I think the shininess would take away from the rust, but I also think it would make it look more like metal, and the more look I was thinking about. For the hand, this was a lot more detailed, so the hand was just took me a lot longer, but the head was really fun to paint. The caution tape that I tried to imitate over the eye, I thought it didn't really balance out the image, so I darkened the right cheek of the sculpture a little bit more, just to make it look like the panels were all put together sporadically and rusting in different ages in time. Again, I really love this sculpture, but the one thing I've been thinking about is my rhino sculpture, and if this sculpture, quote, like, beat it. And the way I'm thinking about that is, my rhino was, like, a lot of people liked the rhino sculpture that I had done inside the gallery and in the past videos. But the way I think about it is, like, that sculpture was very, like, oh, it's impressive that it's balancing, maybe, or that, like, the rhino is there, how big it is, and such a feat to make that sculpture. But for this one, it feels more personal, and it feels like there's a lot more emotion and meaning, which is good. But I feel like to a broader audience, because I did a portrait of me instead of like just a generic robot, it's more personal to me. But I think if someone was in a gallery and looking at the sculpture, they could probably find a theme that was meaningful to them. And then for the wires, I decided to hot glue them inside of the hand. I didn't have to do this for the head. I only hot glued the wires and cut them up and apart because the hand didn't have very much space to shove wires in there. But in the head, since it's totally hollow, I just shoved all the bunches of wires in there and then had them sticking out, and they were pretty cool looking. As previously mentioned, I found these wires at the Goodwill bins. There were just a bunch of old HDMI cables, chargers, and Samsung chargers and things, so I just cut them up and used them for the sculpture. This was the final result. Super happy with the way this one came out. I'm really happy with the way the cords look and the way it does look like it's been ripped apart, and how it does look a little aged, and I like the way it came together. Of course, there's some controversy on whether to use acrylic paint on ceramic, but I don't care. I think I got the result that I wanted. I got the outcome that I wanted, no matter the medium, and I think I just used my resources to my advantage. So I really enjoyed this project, really enjoyed this sculpture. It's one of my favorites, and I really like the theme of the sculpture. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys enjoyed seeing me paint it, and I'll see you in the next one.